We are back on MorningLine. Thanks for joining us. Our guest is John Harris with the Tennessee Firearms Association. Just telling me you have not one but two cases that are going to be going before the U.S. Supreme Court?
We have one, absolutely. The second one we've briefed, and we're witting for them to tell us if they're going to accept it.
And as you said, you're looking more to the courts sometimes as opposed to dealing with lawmakers to deal with issues. Without getting too detailed, I'm just curious.
Without too detailed,
what's going on?
One case involves a law in New York. Now, these are being filed because I'm acting not only as the executive director for the Tennessee Firearms Association, but as its general counsel.
Okay.
One of them involves a law in the state of New York that says even if you have the permit that they require to possess a gun and own it as a civilian, you can't transport it from your home to your business.
Okay.
You can only transport it from your home to a state-recognized gun range. And so there's a challenge that they have already accepted and will decide this year on whether or not that kind of law violates the Second Amendment. The other one, oddly enough, is a challenge to whether or not under current federal structures the federal government can regulate or impose a tax or ban suppressors.
All right, that's what we were just talking about. Let's take a few phone calls, and we're going to get to the legislation that happened in Tennessee this past session. But we'll start off with Ann. Ann, good morning. Hi, Ann.
Good morning. I live in East Nashville, and our East Precinct is very vigilant at every week posting online the number of guns that are found or stolen in cars that are left unlocked in vehicles, and monthly that are stolen in unlocked vehicles in our precinct. And monthly they list the number of guns that are stolen, registered guns, out of vehicles in the city of Nashville. Why are these gun owners who are leaving their guns in their vehicles to be stolen, locked or unlocked? That is a risk to my family.
We've talked about it. You and I did a story along these lines.
Right.
I know you don't like that that's happening. No one does. But, I mean, I don't think you're a responsible gun owner if you leave your car unlocked and your gun on your dashboard.
I totally agree with that. And I'm familiar with the East Precinct reports. I mean, they're doing a great job over there. And Mike Fisher, I think, is the officer that's responsible for those reports, and I'd applaud him for doing it. What the report doesn't tell us, though, clearly is how many of those guns that are being taken from cars are being stolen from a vehicle that's parked in someone's home driveway, or as I hate in East Nashville, parked on the street, but at their home.
Yeah, in front of their home.
Versus a gun that's being stolen from a business that has decided they're going to post their property no guns allowed. And so the only option the person has is to leave the gun in the vehicle. Now, that doesn't excuse leaving it unlocked.
I see.
But we don't know the differential in that data. Now, the people that are, that drive home and leave it in their vehicle, whether it's locked or unlocked, I got no sympathy for them, They're doing the wrong thing. They ought to take the gun in the house.
They take it in or get one of those secure gun safes that you can have. You and I have done a story on it, and you showed me how that's. There are ways to responsibly lock a gun in a vehicle if you have no choice.
That's absolutely right. I mean, they'd have to take the whole car to get the gun, and then they couldn't quickly get it.
Okay, and now I know there was some talk of holding these gun owners responsible if they're leaving the guns and they get stolen. Your thought on this? I mean, they're already victimized by a crime. No one deserves to be victimized by a crime, but then charging them with a crime for allowing their guns to be stolen?
Yeah, and the reason in those instances that they're even leaving the gun in the vehicle is because there's a state law that makes them do it.
Yeah, sometimes they go to a place where they have no choice.
A school, for example.
A school, for example. All right, so I guess the bottom line in your mind is lock them up, take it in. But you gave me an example once of folks maybe who live downtown that have a parking garage down the road from where they live, and they don't have the proper permit to walk with that gun that short distance. Right. So technically, even now, of course, you could do it. You could put it in your brief. No one's going to know. But still, if you want to not violate the law, you can't walk with it as a concealed carry, can you?
No, not without having a transport permit in Tennessee.
Yeah, so there's some issue. That's something lawmakers
Well, it's
should
just
look at.
it's a stupid restriction that we've got because it, as a practical matter, doesn't accomplish anything beneficial.
Yeah, right. And in fact, it could be a negative thing because then people, I don't want to break the law, I'm going to leave it in the car, and then the gun gets stolen.
Well, yeah, the robber doesn't care.
No, obviously not. All right, let's go to David. David, good morning. Hi, David.
Good morning. I just want to comment. I'm already seeing people, and I'm not going to say which side of their political views are, but basically, after these situations, everybody goes to the first easy point without really doing some in research. And basically, it's easier for me right now to buy fabrication equipment, industrial machine shop equipment, and make my own silencer and pay that money than going through the scrutiny that already exists if I try to apply for a silencer. When you do that, they basically are going through everything that you cannot even believe with. They're going through taxes, they're looking at your financial records, they're looking at all your employment history. Now, they're not telling you this, but when you request, it's not just requesting like a permit for concealed carry. We're talking about usually a 6 month to 9 month process. And can some people slip through that? They may not be mentally sound. Yeah, but that's a rare number. Believe me, when you go through that scrutiny, when the ATF and all the powers that be check that, believe me, they check it. And even once you may be approved, they're going to keep tabs on you. They may not let you know that. So when I say it's probably easier for you to spend the money, thousands of dollars, to buy fabrication equipment and make it yourself, I'm serious about that. It is no joke. So for people to be like, oh, it's lax, you can get a silencer and da-da-da. No, as soon as you request a silencer and fill out that application, red flags go up, and that's a serious request, and it's just not like trying to get a concealed carry permit. And I hope that John will maybe really let people know that you just don't get a silencer by just filling out and looking at your license and making sure that you pay,
No, I hear you, and you said as much. I assume you would agree with him that.
Yeah, I do. I mean, what happens is if you today wanted to buy a suppressor,
okay,
you go into a dealer that's registered as a SOT special. You got to have a special registration to even sell them.
Okay.
Okay. And then you, as a buyer, would have to fill out what's called a Form 4, which is a federal tax form. Mm-hmm. It's a one-page document. Well, 2 pages, but it's predominantly 1 page. You have to include passport quality photos, and 2 sets of fingerprints, and then you mail that off with a $200 check to the ATF, and then you wait. And the waiting period can be 6 months, it could be a year. Mm-hmm. But it's the same process you go through if you're buying a short barrel rifle, a short barrel shotgun, if you're getting approval for a tank, my friend that you've met,
oh, sure,
or a machine gun. It's the exact same process for all of them. And I think there's an accelerating trend, because even the federal government recognizes that there's really not a good reason that the suppressors are on that list anymore. Mm-hmm. Because there are so many societal benefits as we built up the density of housing, and the housing density spreading out into rural areas to allow people to put essentially mufflers on their guns.
I'm just curious, and I'm not certainly far from an expert on suppressors, but does it, when you put a suppressor on a weapon, does it take away any of the velocity of the bullet?
Minimally.
Minimally. So it really doesn't change too much except for the sound. I was just curious. I had heard sometimes suppressors could reduce the velocity, but minimal.
Not of any. I mean, we have snipers that use them, and they wouldn't be doing it if it was a serious
they're
impact.
firing a Beres rifle, and it's so powerful anyway. But
yeah, it's you might as well put one on a howitzer.
Yeah, no kidding. Right, you were right about that. Let's go next to John. John, good morning. Hi, John.
Oh, good morning. Am I on?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question for John. When limitations on gun ownership are discussed, and they're discussed all the time, people often cite to the militia provision in the Second Amendment and say, well, when the founders wrote the Second Amendment, they were referring to militias and, a well-regulated, carefully controlled by the government militia unit but that private citizens do not have a right to keep and bear arms. So, John, would you comment on that, please, sir?
Sure.
Well, a militia, the definition, so I'm not sure is a militia a citizen's?
The definition of a militia at the time our country was founded, and even as of today, is all adult males.
Yeah.
Basically from age, depending on the statute you look at, from 17 to as high as age 50.
Okay.
And our founders viewed the militia just like the movie The Patriot, as everybody out there that could pick up a stick and beat an enemy to death with it. Okay?
Yeah.
And so it is the occurrence of the terminology that was used at the time, but the militia clearly meant, and Scalia said this in the Heller decision in 2008, the militia is all able-bodied adults now. They don't distinguish men and women anymore. And what it meant was, in Tennessee, for example, if you're in that age bracket, you have an affirmative legal duty, whether you realize it or not, to respond to a militia call made by the state governor. Now, it's not the National Guard, that's not the militia, it's not the military, it's the citizenry. And it may be a natural emergency, let's say it's a tornado, but the governor has the power, although they never use it, to call out the state militia.
Meaning if they did that, I would have to respond.
Yes.
Meaning to come for some type of state emergency.
You are called into state service. You don't get paid for it. You're just called.
Doesn't necessarily mean I'm going into combat or something.
It doesn't. But at the time of the militia clause that was written, it included the capacity to repel
foreign invaders?
Well, Indians, foreign invaders, whatever.
All right.
You know, it was in fact a localized armed force that was like volunteer firemen.
Yeah.
Had an affirmative duty to respond to the call. And what the Second Amendment means is not some kind of organized National Guard is entitled to have guns, but there is an affirmative duty on the adults that are subject to the militia call to be well regulated, which in their terminology meant well practiced and skilled with the weapons that they might be called upon to use. And that's what the clause really means, is that the adults in that age bracket had an affirmative legal duty that could be enforced by the criminal code to own weapons, own ammunition, and to practice with them sufficiently that if they were called into service to fight Indians, just using an example, I've got Indian heritage in me, so don't take it.
Okay. Indians, Native Americans, all right.
That they could show up and be competent. You know, as opposed to what you see a lot. If you called out the adults in that age bracket from East Nashville, most of them, well, I'm just picking on East Nashville because I live there, most of them wouldn't have guns, and the ones that did may not know the first thing about really how to shoot them.
Okay. Let's take a break. That's interesting. We'll get a history lesson here. We'll take a break. When we come back, more phone calls, and we'll continue our conversation when it gets to what state lawmakers did this last session as well. Stay with us. Be right back.